What up, TTK Potters? I'm your host, Sky Guasco, rolling solo today, bringing you another edition of our mini series of running back steals from 2021. If you have not caught the rest of our episodes, tune back right here on the Fantasy Focused YouTube channel. We have Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Damian Harris, AJ Dillon was done by Bob last night solo, and I am doing today my own 49er, Elijah Mitchell. What we're doing in this series is we're tuning into 2021, what made them running back steals according to their ADP, and how we can maybe find them in a comp for 2022. So a guy like Elijah Mitchell came out of nowhere, right? In Dynasty, you might have drafted him, but in redraft leagues, he was not really drafted at all. But he rose to the top. Guys got injured. He came up, did very well. How can we find another player like that? I've got a player comp for you. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. We much appreciate it. If you'd like to catch our longer episodes, these are not available in the episodes of the mini series, only on YouTube. But if you'd like more content from myself, from Bob, from the rest of our team, Buck and Levy and Jordan and everybody else, please make sure you find us on podcasts, which is the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast, anywhere you listen to the Believe Podcast Network. All right, y'all, these are quick hitters, so I'm going to jump right into this. Once again, I am recapping the 2021 season from Elijah Mitchell, looking ahead to 2022 and seeing if we could find a player comp that might be able to draft and sneak into the back of your drafts who might have an opportunity to find bigger waves this year as well. All right, so we'll start with the 2021 recap. Elijah Mitchell burst onto the scene with the 49ers, right? 5 100-yard rushing games. Okay. He only played 10 games this season. All right. If we think back to draft day, all right, Raheem Mostert was one of my guys. All right. I had a bold prediction that he was going to stay healthy above everything else, and he was going to supersede all the, naysayers throughout his career, and he was going to burst onto the scene as a top 12 running back. Well, unfortunately, he ended up getting injured the first play of the season, pretty much. He was out for the rest of the year. Then you had Trey Sermon, who was a third-round draft pick out of Ohio State. He came in, fumbled his first NFL carry. He got a concussion on that carry as well. He was out for a number of weeks, never really was the same after that for his rookie season. Then we had my man Jeff Wilson, who I've loved the last couple of years, kind of the Elijah Mitchell before Elijah Mitchell, right? So Jeff Wilson got an opportunity. He made the most of it in short work, but then he got hurt, right? So he hurt something in his knee. So he gets out, sprained PCL. He's out for a number of weeks. So that leads to then JaMychal Hasty and Elijah Mitchell, right? Getting work. Elijah Mitchell comes in first game of the season, goes over 100 yards, and you knew something special was there. Now, before we dive into Elijah Mitchell and how good he was, let's take a look back on just the history of Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco alone. All right. We won't even talk about great running backs with Kyle Shanahan, like Alfred Morris back in the day in Washington. Okay. Devonta Freeman, guys like that, right? Tevin Coleman, before he came to the 49ers with the Falcons, he was very good in short work behind Devonta Freeman as well. So Kyle Shanahan, obviously similar offense to his dad, Mike Shanahan, who had incredible, Terrell Davis, incredible running backs, Clinton Portis over the years with the Denver Broncos, with the Washington team previously as well. Great running backs under Mike Shanahan, great running scheme under Kyle Shanahan now, right? We see that around the league in other teams picking that up, right? The Packers, the Titans, the Rams running a similar offense to Kyle Shanahan's offense coming from his tree. So we love the running game overall in Kyle Shanahan's offense. The question is, who is it going to be? With the 49ers dating back for the last 5 years that Shanahan's been there, it really hasn't been the guy you thought it was going to be because injuries have destroyed the 49ers, unfortunately, on the field. The only guy that really took off, oddly enough, was Carlos Hyde a few years ago, right? He was the RB6 because he was actually catching passes also, but that was basically because nobody else was left. All right. Jerick McKinnon went down. You had Tevin Coleman hasn't panned out, right? Raheem Mostert hasn't panned out other than last year or 2 years ago. Great season down into the playoffs, of course, right? You've had other running backs kind of come and go out of that system and unfortunately not be able to stay healthy with any sort of certainty. So do I think right off the bat that Elijah Mitchell can repeat what he did this year? And if he plays more than 10 games, exceed what he did last year? Absolutely. Incredible talent, picked in the 6th round, right? But we saw the talent that he has on the field, and he outperformed Trey Sermon, his fellow rookie this year, who was drafted 3 rounds ahead of him. So Elijah Mitchell should come in as that number one, but they're talking about re-signing Raheem Mostert. They might bring back Jeff Wilson. They still have JaMychal Hasty. They have Trenton Cannon, who's on the roster. They still have Kyle Juszczyk, who isn't involved too much carrying the ball, but he is there to take carries, to carry a goal line carry every once in a while, right? And not to mention, this year we should have Trey Lance, who's going to be running the ball more often, obviously, than Jimmy Garoppolo did as well. So a ton of question marks around how the offense is going to actually look for the 49ers, which has nothing to do with Elijah Mitchell and his talent. So when you look at Elijah Mitchell, you have to actually, kind of peel the onion, if you will, to look at the entire scene before you even look at how good this player is. The player is awesome. I'll run through his numbers here in a second. Elijah Mitchell's great. In this system, he's even better. But can he, A, rise to the top again? Does Raheem Mostert just come back in and, get the job back, essentially? Does Jeff Wilson come back stronger than last year and he, has that number 2 role? Does JaMychal Hasty take a step up in the passing game, right? How much does Trey Lance actually run the ball? So those are all question marks that we have to kind of unveil this summer, and we will get into that. But today we're talking Elijah Mitchell. So if Elijah Mitchell is the starter, which I think ultimately he will be, whether Raheem Mostert comes back or not, I just think the talent is there. And yes, he only played 10 games, but the 49ers have been decimated by injuries. So I don't think anybody will hold that against him. If he can play full games, right? Full season, I think Elijah Mitchell is going to be absolutely fantastic this year and probably still a steal or at least a value on draft day. I don't see him being a 3rd round pick, even if he's the starter. He's probably going to be a 4th or a 5th round pick because there's so many questions, especially if Mostert comes back. And I think he could still be a value and maybe even a steal. Let's break down Elijah Mitchell. 5 100-yard rushing games last year, 18 plus touches in 8 of his 10 games. I'll say that again. He only played 10 games. There was only 2 of them that he didn't see 18 plus touches. Now, not a ton of targets, right? Not a ton of receptions, but he's getting the carries. Any running back in the NFL getting 15 plus, 20 plus obviously is frosting. But 15 plus touches for a running back in this day and age in the NFL is fantastic. 18 plus to the 20 plus range for Elijah Mitchell in that offense with that scheme, with that offensive line, with George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk, 2 of the best run blockers at their respective positions in the NFL as well. The scheming of Shanahan, absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal usage there for Elijah Mitchell. Now, he wasn't really drafted, as I mentioned, in 12-team redraft leagues, right? You might have taken a stab on him in Dynasty just because you have much deeper rosters, rookie drafts, and all that. But in 12-team leagues, he wasn't drafted, right? His ADP last year at this time, Elijah Mitchell in August on draft day, his ADP was running back 64 in PPR leagues. There's no way you drafted him. And if you did, and you listen to Dweez, our own Dweez here on the channel, who is the only guy in the industry that I heard repping Elijah Mitchell actually as an actual candidate to be drafted, I think it's hard pressed to say that you did. If you did, honor system and way to go. I would imagine that you didn't. You're probably like me and you drafted Raheem Mostert. You might have even taken a stab on Trace Sermon. You might have even taken Jeff Wilson late, right? Mostert and Sermon went in the 6th round pretty much back to back because nobody knew really what was going on. Wilson went later as a flyer in like the 12th to 15th round. So you might have taken a chance on those 3 guys, not Elijah Mitchell. Now, Elijah Mitchell was the guy when he was active on the field, right? Mostert goes down, Wilson goes down, Sermon doesn't pay out. Here we go with Elijah Mitchell. He was 3rd among all running backs in opportunity share with 80%, right? So when he was on the field, he was getting 80% of the work of the running game, right? Obviously, fantastic usage. We want that. He was 2nd in team runs per play. Team run plays per game. The 49ers and Elijah Mitchell was 2nd in the NFL, 8th in rushing yards, and he only played 10 games. Okay, now, again, the 49ers don't really use their running backs in the passing game, so he was 63rd in targets. Hate that, obviously. 56th in receptions. Don't love that, but we know that's not really their game plan, right? 49er running backs, if healthy, are RB2s guaranteed with RB1 weekly upside. And we've seen Jeff Wilson, JaMychal Hasty even, right? Raheem Mostert, obviously, and Elijah Mitchell. We've seen these guys like be the number 1 running back any given week, multiple touchdowns, over 100 yards rushing. So they have extreme upside, but the floor is very nice too because it's about RB 18 at worst weekly. So I like that consistency with the upside. Now, if he retains the starting job, I think he's got top 10 upside easy, top 5 if he can get 10 plus touchdowns, or he's involved in the passing game with Anthony Lynn coming over as an assistant coach. Right. So Mike McDaniel, who I love, and he's kind of got a lot of rep for his personality lately, which is fun, but he's with the Dolphins now, the offensive coordinator for the 49ers last couple of years. He's now with the Dolphins. He's gone. They bring in Anthony Lynn, right? Longtime Chargers, and spent a year last year with the Detroit Lions. And look what DeAndre Swift was able to do. Jamal Williams was able to do, right? I think and we saw Austin Eckler, Melvin Gordon before that with Anthony Lynn. He dates back to the Bills running backs back in the day too. I like Anthony Lynn a lot for the passing game and running backs in general. Okay. Even if it's a two-headed monster, maybe it's Jermichael Hasty, maybe it's a little Mostert, maybe it's a little Wilson. It should be a lot of Elijah Mitchell early and often. I like that a lot. So Anthony Lynn coming to San Francisco is definitely a plus. Now, again, I like Elijah Mitchell a lot. He's got a lot to go through this summer. He's got to win the job. He's got to be the starter. He's got to stay healthy. And we've got to avoid Trey Lance, right, being Lamar Jackson, basically, which would be great for fantasy, but not for Elijah Mitchell. If all of those things happen, plus Anthony Lynn, plus Kyle Shanahan's system, I think Elijah Mitchell can repeat and even be better than last year. Okay. Now, if that happens, I'm willing to go out there and draft a guy in probably the 4th round, maybe ahead of the crowd, just because I want to make sure that I get my hands on that. My question is, again, am I going to be able to make it happen, with all of these other question marks when it actually comes time to pull the trigger on draft day? So love Elijah Mitchell. You've heard Levy all, last year talking about he's my guy. He was, and he crushed it. So we love Elijah Mitchell. Now, how do we find this year's Elijah Mitchell? Because all we want to do, right, is find sleepers, find deep sleepers, and they're hard to do, especially at running back, because you're talking about a handcuff best case scenario, and then they have to wean themselves through the top edge, right? Mostert got hurt. Wilson got hurt. Hasty didn't pan out. Sermon didn't pan out. So then Elijah Mitchell from 5th string gets to, kind of rise to the top there. Who is the guy in the NFL this year for 2022 in fantasy football that I can see being that guy if he gets the opportunity? For me, my player comp to Elijah Mitchell from 2021 to 2022 is Khalil Herbert in Chicago. All right. He was the last pick of the 6th round. Elijah Mitchell was picked as the 10th pick of the 6th round, right? Similar draft cattle, 6th round, just kind of flyers at running back, right? But Khalil Herbert crushed. If you played fantasy football, you're very aware of those 4 games that Khalil Herbert played, right? David Montgomery went out, and at the end of week 4, week 5, 6, 7, and 8, Khalil Herbert got the touches. Okay. Now, he had 20 plus touches in weeks 6, 7, and 8. He had 100 yards rushing in week 6 versus Green Bay, week 7 versus Tampa Bay. Obviously, a great running defense there, right? He only had a touchdown, but he was RB6 in week 7 versus Tampa Bay, RB11 in week 6 versus Green Bay. Okay, so we had the upside, had the burst, had the great plays, right? Now, a rookie coming in relief. David Montgomery, as far as that spot fills, if David Montgomery were to go down, right? As far as the Bears running back went last year, David Montgomery was 2nd among running backs in snap share, 4th in opportunity share. Elijah Mitchell was 3rd. David Montgomery was 4th. He was 9th in carries. David Montgomery, 5th in red zone touches, 13th in target share, 12th in fantasy points per game in PPR. David Montgomery has missed 6 games over the last 2 years, and the Bears should take a big step forward with the new regime and coaching. Fields in year 2. Herbert, for me, is one of my low-profile handcuffs for draft season. Nobody expected Elijah Mitchell last year. Nobody expects Khalil Herbert this year. He's going to be a guy I'm probably taking with one of my last picks because you never know, and you need that running back if somebody were to go down. All right, y'all. It's a quick hitter here, so we're going to wrap this up. That was Elijah Mitchell, RB steal for 2021. A recap of how he made it there. Can he repeat it? And then looking ahead at 2022, who is a guy that could be last year's Elijah Mitchell this year, right? 6th round NFL draft capital, basically undrafted in redraft leagues. That guy for me right now, Khalil Herbert of the Chicago Bears, 6th round draft capital in the NFL, probably not going to be drafted, right? If David Montgomery's healthy coming into the season in redraft leagues, he's going to be a handcuff for me. If any league I have Montgomery at least, and he's going to be a last round pick, even if I don't. Love the kid's talent. Love the 4-game stretch last year. He should only get better in this offense with the Bears taking a step forward. So that'll wrap this one up. If you haven't caught the rest of our channels, again, we have Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon Damian Harris, AJ Dillon, and now Elijah Mitchell as our mini series for RB steals. We did a longer episode for RB steals with Buck and Bob. We did a longer episode with RB bus from 2021 with me and Bob. You can check those out at the podcast, Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast, anywhere you listen to the Believe Podcast Network. And we will come next week and we'll start coming with wide receivers, bus, and steals as well. Keep it tuned right here on the Fantasy Focus YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss any action. Leave me a comment in who you think was one of the greater steals for fantasy running backs this year. I'll be back with you next time. I am your host, Sky Guasco. We'll catch you next time right here on the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast and the Fantasy Focused channel. Catch you next time, y'all. Be good.